Welcome, everybody, to the next success training chapter on the KarateBuilt Charter. And this is going to be part two, where we talk about results. I'm here with Senior Master Laura Sanborn. How are you doing there, ma'am?
I'm doing great, sir. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is excellent. We're so excited about our KarateBuilt Charter. This is one of the best things that, as we continue to do great stuff in the school. Oh, this is not with Mr. Flees, he could make it today, but it's with you. We didn't update that. So the KarateBuilt Charter is what we're basing all of our thoughts, feelings, actions, everything we do in our school on. It's that KarateBuilt is a highly disciplined martial arts school. That's what we talked about last time in our last podcast, and that we measure results based on not on who we exclude, but on students' constant growth from the moment they start to black belt and beyond. And KarateBuilt black belts take responsibility to lead with integrity. So those are the key points of what we are all about, and this affects everything we do from the moment a student is starting in our school till when they get black belt, and then beyond black belt when they're masters and senior masters like Senior Master Sanborn, and they learn how to be instructors as well. So these are going to be today. We're going to talk about how we measure results based not on who we exclude. And next time we'll talk about the rest of our charter. So let's start with that, Senior Master.
Yes.
One thing to talk about is, why is it important to focus on who we include rather than who we exclude, and be focused on inclusivity? What are your first thoughts on that?
We don't turn people away. You can meet a stranger outside anywhere and they say, "Oh, you do martial arts," because they see the shirt. And it doesn't matter where they're from. It doesn't matter how they present themselves, whether in a wheelchair, crutches, walking with a limp, or older, younger, it doesn't matter. Our question is always, are you interested in martial arts? Let me tell you about it. Not, oh, what can't you do? Because, what are your exclusions themselves? We don't want them to have those exclusions and have the impression that, oh, I can't do something just because everybody else says I can't.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple key points of this. I'm going to share the screen again so I can write them down. A couple key points that I thought of when you're saying that is one that we really do believe that everybody can do it. And we'll come back to that. Two, it's there's good reasons to do it. Do KarateBuilt Martial Arts. There's reasons to do it that go beyond just their like a sport, or the reasons that we do it have much more to do with personal development than they do with what a lot of times people think of, which is high performance athletes, competition, and so many other activities have these types of not necessarily problems, but they're automatically exclusionary. When my son was playing football and he was very successful at it, he got to play, but the other kids that maybe weren't as good didn't get to play. And I never thought that was really that great. I mean, they're so worried about winning versus the development of the student, development of the person. I understand that's how it is for football, but that's how it is for a lot of athletic endeavors. It's how it is for a lot of music or gymnastics or art, that people get praised because of how they achieve. But the reasons to do KarateBuilt Martial Arts is for a lot of other reasons. And the third thing is, I really want to emphasize, is that we still have high standards. So the first thing that you talked about was being welcoming and that everybody can do it, but that still doesn't mean that we don't expect a lot of very, very high standards. That those are two different things, and you could have both. You can have both inclusivity and high standards. What are your thoughts on that, Master Sanborn?
Absolutely. Part of being inclusive is having the high standards. Is we want anybody who comes in to feel like they can improve, not just, oh, this is what I can do, and that's it. It's okay, the expectation is that, yes, you start right down here maybe, but the expectation is that you're going to continually improve and to the point that you reach black belt and beyond.
Well, and I think that what happens is what embedded in what you said is sometimes even us as parents or as a kid or as a student, we think, well, I've got a restriction or I'm not as fast as the other people. I'm not as talented as somebody else. So therefore I couldn't do something to an exceptional level. And we're going to talk next time about how we measure results, but it's one way to think about it is it's a lot harder for somebody to do something if they're not as talented as somebody else. Now, this doesn't mean we don't have a lot of super talented athletes that do martial arts and they can get, and we offer the competition component and everything else. But even if, let's say you want to be competitive, we have students that before they came to us, they thought that this was beyond their reach. And the way we're looking at everybody is based on pushing them very hard to get a lot of growth. And if you're growing and you're twice as good as you were, then and another person might have come in at a different talent level and they're twice as good. Those are equivalent measurements for us.
And one of the main parts of what you just said is we're teaching them not just to be pushed, but to push themselves is what we want them to learn from it, is they grow because they learn that they can push themselves farther and farther. And the more we help them with that development, the higher our standards can be and the higher their standards for themselves can be.
I'm so glad you said that. I mean, that's I'm going to write that down there. Teach them to push themselves. And one thing that we end up hearing from, and I think it applies to this in terms of inclusivity, is if a child or an adult student gets kind of to an edge of growth, somewhere where they're going to be challenged. And for anything great that you've ever done in your life, you've gotten to the point where, man, it's scary, or man, I don't know if I can do it, or man, it's tough. And those of you who are successful get through those times. You've learned to get through those times, and that starts with us as parents. So we hear sometimes this phrase, I don't want to push my kids, but what we really need to be thinking about is you want to teach them to push themselves through those edges of growth. And when a parent hears a kid say, oh, that's really hard, or it's too hard, or even things like, oh, I don't want to go, I'm busy playing video games, or I'm busy at home, and whatever, teaching them to push themselves through those moments is one of the most important skills, if not maybe the most important skill that they could learn. And that's what we're asking them to do all the time, is constantly pushing themselves. You're a senior master and 7th degree black belt, and you're every week training with me to push yourself further, and we're not 25 years old anymore, so that can be a challenge as we get older, but we're still pushing ourselves to be better, and we expect that in ourselves, and that's what we expect for all of our students. So that high standards thing is a critical part of being inclusive at the same time.
Well, and we expect our community of students and instructors to have that encouraging attitude where each other they're helping, going, oh yeah, you can do better. Oh wow, that was a better kick than you did before. Any kind of encouragement on, you did better, you're doing better. I know you can do it. Let me hold that target for you so you can kick a little bit higher. Oh, kick higher this time because you can. It's the entire community does it. The students do it with each other. We get the parents to help because we want the parents to learn how to teach their children to push themselves. The instructors do it. So everybody has the same encouraging attitude that you can do it. It's just a simple thing.
Yeah, I think that's a critical thing you said. And I mean, the next part of this is, how do we get the instructors to do this? And you started with that. We built a culture that the instructors are expecting more from all the students. So we're not expecting them to come in with a certain level of ability. We're not expecting them to come in with a certain, willingness to push themselves. We expect our instructors to understand that our job is to push themselves physically and push themselves mentally at the same time. And that's one of the things. What other things would you say maybe about that, or that our instructors are good at doing so that they can work with really anybody?
is recognizing that we have the skill as instructors to pick the thing they can do, make that one better, and then look at the things that they can't do yet and help them get that next thing that they didn't think they could do before. Even if it's, it could be a 3-year-old who the parent walks in, they're like, well, they run everywhere. They're never going to be able to take class because they can't stand still.
Mm-hmm.
We can get that 3-year-old to the point where they can sit and listen, or do listening position, which is not an easy position to hold, especially at that age. But they can stay in that position.
For everybody, sorry for interrupting you. For everybody else that's listening or watching or reading about this, that's when kids have to stay on one knee with both hands on their knee. And we expect that behavior. I'm sorry, go ahead, ma'am.
That's okay. But that's exactly what I'm talking about, is we expect that they can do it. And it may just take practice, but the parents never even think about it. That, oh, I have to practice having my kid stand still for a couple of seconds at a time. I have to expect that of my kid when I tell him to do something, that he does it right away. Or when I say stand still, you stand still. They're just, because from even something that seems as simple as that, when we look at people, we know we can teach them those things.
Yeah, I think what you said makes sense in this way too. We hear this phrase a lot of times, oh, but they're only 3, or
Yes.
maybe, oh, but they're only 10, or, maybe they're older. Maybe it's an adult student and they're 50. Oh, but I'm 50. And all that, oh, but I'm fill in the blank is automatically a self-defeating idea in pretty much every case that we can think of. In those, oh, but I'm whatever, oh, but I'm this age, our expectations are higher for that age, and our expectations are higher for those people than they are for themselves, or that they're in the kids' case, their parents have for them. And that's not a knock on the parents. They wouldn't know. How would I know as a parent whether or not my kid could, things like, it seems like he's running around, like you said, for example. How could I expect that they could stand still and be very disciplined for the time that we ask them to do? And when they see that, they're really amazed. Unfortunately, they think it's our magic because our instructors are so good, which they are. But what we also hope that the parents get to learn is that they can have those high expectations too. And then ultimately that the kids can have expectations for themselves, or our adult students can have high expectations for themselves in this kind of training.
Yes.
And some other things I think the instructors do well is we educate them a lot. And I think that our KarateBuilt Martial Arts were kind of unique, and then we have the advantage of some of my background and some of your background in the books that we've written and put together about all kinds of topics like ADHD, autism, other developmental issues, working with kids to get better grades if they don't have really great grades, fear and anxieties, and all those books are sort of over there on the side of you. Where you could show them the library, right over there. These are some of the books that we've written, and all the instructors are educated in that content. So we teach them in conflict resolution, in real conflict resolution, not like minimal things, how actually to resolve conflict, not just how to stop it. We teach them about what does it mean when a kid has ADHD, and the different types of ADHD and the different subcomponents of it. What happens when a kid has autism? What can they do? And the education that and by the way, also, how do we push highly talented people? So somebody that's highly talented that wants to be a high performer in soccer, football, gymnastics, somewhere else, those students that we've had do way better in those kind of events. We've got somebody training for the Olympics now. We've got many students that get tons of success stories. And those are the physical things. The mental things also are very similar. We've got doctors and lawyers and all kinds of different engineers out of our students that have started with us when they were even 3 years old. But again, the education that we give them, that we give the instructors on how to work with kids that are 3 to 6 and 7, how to work with kids that are 7 and up, and then how to work with adults ranging from big, small, old, young, all kinds of male, female, and in all kinds of other areas. We get a really high level of education, or we expect a high level of education that we give to our instructors so that they know all this stuff. That's really unique among activities that people would do. I don't know many people in any of those other fields I mentioned, or at your health club, or at even at school, that have as much education as our guys have on all these different topics.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with our leadership program, where the students are learning how to praise each other and recognize success in each other. And the parents watching are encouraged as well to recognize the good things in their kids. It's recognizing something that's good and making sure it's mentioned, making sure that people know that you saw that they are better than they were, or that they just did something good. And that pushes them to learn. That helps the leaders learn for themselves, to recognize it in themselves as well. Oh, I just gave somebody a high five for doing that. I did it too. What do you know? So it has that rebound inside themselves.
I heard a couple things in what you said. That number one, that we are teaching the instructors to be understanding and empathetic of what challenges might happen or might occur, but also that we're massively positive, massively reinforcing. And I think this is massive reinforcement or of great behavior. We teach the instructors to massively reinforce behavior when it's always good, when we see improvement, but when it's always good. And we also reinforce behavior when we see a contrast with bad behavior in a class. So, but what usually is missed is that massive reinforcement when students are doing a great job that we expect them to always do. So we continue to do reinforcement and understand that that's a way to keep moving them forward towards bigger goals.
And we expect positiveness to be brought in from outside as well. We expect other people to recognize when somebody does something. I'll have a parent of just any student go, oh, that kid was so nice, he helped my kid with the door. They'll come back and tell me when somebody else's child has done a good job, or when they've themselves like got an award or something, that they can be proud of those things for themselves, for other people, and that just builds on itself for their own family.
What you're saying is really important. I think that in society today, and it's really always been this way, is that we tend to have a culture of when we see something, we're going to come up with the criticism of it. And that's not necessarily bad. We understand that that is how people grow. They might, you're pointing out, hey man, that wasn't as good, or that there was something wrong with that. You could learn from those kind of criticisms. But what works better is when people do the right things and we reinforce what the right things are to pull them up. You could try to kind of pull them down with criticism. And the option there is, and I think so many people have learned that. I think we even do that as parents sometimes. We're noticing that if a kid does a really good job making their bed, but their room's dirty, we don't ever mention that they made their bed, but we complain about the room being dirty. And I'm not saying don't complain about the room being dirty, but mention the bed too. Mention the other things too. And that's often not human nature. It's not how we were brought up. My career when I graduated college was as an engineer. That whole job was you do design reviews and you show people stuff and then they complain about it, and it's kind of the job to tell you, come up with ideas what might go wrong. But that's not how we want to interact with people on a normal human basis. If that was the case, then it wouldn't have been effective in the engineering example I gave. But if some people said what you did right, what you did better, what looks really good about it, then imagine how it would work with people. With people, that's important. So it's not just like a silly, we have a positive attitude with everybody. Oh, you're great, when they're not, when something isn't great. We're reinforcing things that are actually improving all the time. I had some other questions that people ask us here. How do we ensure that all students, regardless of their abilities, have a place in our program? How do we make sure that they feel comfortable?
Oh,
Well, I had some thoughts on that, maybe to get started. Go ahead.
I can picture it happening, and I'm trying to figure out how to explain what's in my head. Because we don't make a big deal of their limitations when they come in.
Mm-hmm.
Not like the entire class has to stop and, oh, let him get over where he has to be. we expect that student be able to do what he can do, and everybody else respects that he's doing the parts he can do. And if they see something they can help with, like maybe I just need to, oh, why don't you kick a little higher? Because I saw a minute ago you kicked up here instead of down here. It was awesome. It's the welcome of, it doesn't matter how different you are.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is that you have the attitude to come in just like I did and try.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I think we do is not overreact to anybody's limitations.
Right.
And again, we keep talking about limitations here as we start out, and I think that's our topic for today. But we expect those just to be factors in their life, real things. We had students that didn't have an arm, or I remember we know one student got to third-degree black belt. She didn't have arms, either arm, so she had to use her feet to learn how to do things. Yet that when they would start with us, we're not going to go, oh, well, here's the problems that we're going to have. We're going to talk about what we can do and be tailoring what we do to what their ability level is. And for example, even back to the example of 3, 4, 5-year-olds, we don't expect them to memorize things. We expect them to do really well at the things we tell them to do and learn discipline and to be able to do all the techniques that we should teach. We don't expect them to memorize, because that isn't, if you listen to Piaget or any of the developmental psychologists, that isn't something that's really a skill for them, is to be able to memorize. So that would be an example there. If it was a physical limitation, that limitation most everybody has when they're 3, 4, 5, or 6. But if it's a physical limitation, we can tailor the way we teach and tailor what they do. If somebody didn't have any arms, well, they can't do the punches that we ask them to do, or we can't do the hand techniques that we ask them to do. So they can do those with their feet or with their body or in other ways. Again, having high expectations, but still be inclusive with everybody. Do you have some examples? Oh, sorry. I use some examples. Go ahead, say what you're going to say.
We don't isolate them. Even if they're in class, we don't pull them off to the side and say, okay, now you're going to work over here because this is all you can do. Yes, part of the time they may be separated doing something, but so might everybody in class at some point being working on something specific. But it's not because you can't do what everybody else is doing, you're going to be over here.
Mm-hmm.
It's the included in class, not isolated. It's not always private lessons. It's in class doing what everybody else is doing to the best of their ability and being pushed to do more.
Well, not so including them. What you're saying there is including them. Inclusivity means including them in the culture and the environment, so that not only they get to and again, we're kind of implying this is people with limitations, but in that, I think you can imagine it that way, where they're able to do stuff with everybody else, and the other people get the benefit of. Sometimes I think it's more of a benefit for the other students working with somebody with limitations, because then they get to see, if that person can do this stuff and we have high expectations, then I better do it. And they get to have high expectations outside of our school, in the community, that somebody that might have vision impairment, be blind, that somebody that is in a wheelchair, well, they can do all. I mean, there's there's real situations. Certain, maybe they can't drive, but they could do other things. They could do a lot of other things and expand what they can do. And that's what we expect. What are some examples of some students that we've had that you could tell some stories about that came to us and then were big success stories?
We've had one recently who just got world champion in sparring. And when he started with us, he had no control, like none. He was hitting too hard and couldn't control his emotions if he wasn't winning. And he had to learn to control all of that stuff to be able to participate in class without hurting anybody else and without hurting himself. And then take that outside into a very stressful situation like a tournament and continue that outside. And he's a world champion now in sparring. So he's got control. He's got things he had to learn to do. I've got one who, she has MS and every type of dyslexia, and I call them all the Xias because sometimes they tell me the whole list and I can't keep track of them. But all of those, but participates fully in a large class with enthusiasm and full out putting all of her attitude, which is really good for the whole class because she is super cheerful and she tries hard on absolutely everything. If she
Yeah,
can't do something, she says, oh, now I can.
yeah, and I'd contrast that with the culture in most athletic endeavors where parents are maybe on the side. You think about a little league parent and the one of them saying, "Yeah, but that why is that kid playing and not this kid, and not my kid, or why is that kid playing? We need to put that kid in." There's no thought of that in what we do because they're all doing it and moving. We're pushing them forward at the same time by including everybody in the process, and everybody's learning that we all should have high expectations, and we don't put up with problems. We expect discipline. That was our last chapter that we talked about, and that's part of the foundation of how we can help people grow. I think that's an important training thing. My examples would have been a couple of them. Would Bruce Pfeiffer, who was a wonderful man. He passed away a few years ago. He started with us in his 70s, and he could only kick like this high. And when he became a third-degree black belt after a long time, he could kick this high. That's a big difference. And he was getting older at the same time too. I mean, he was a wonderful student and everybody loved working with him. He could still do everything. We still had him doing sparring with everybody. We still had him doing board breaks. We still had him doing all the things that we do in martial arts, but we adapted it to what he could do being in his 70s. And I think he might have been 80 when he got to third-degree black belt. So that was one example. There's numerous examples, and we can list them, and maybe when we write about this a little bit, we'll list some more examples. But the idea here is that all of those people are pushed very hard, and the ones that may not have limitations get pushed just as hard, and we expect even more out of them. And the comparison isn't A to A comparison. It's different for everybody. We're not comparing people. We're comparing people as individuals, or we're pushing people as individuals, not as with some other one person versus another.
Exactly.
Maybe a better way to say that.
One of the ones that I actually was thinking of doesn't really have limitations. He came to us as an adult with his son and no physical disabilities at all, no mental disabilities, nothing like that. Just an overwhelmingly stressful job that required working around a schedule that was all day long, most evenings. And, he's on his way to third-degree black belt. And then when he was out with an injury, we were calling him constantly, seeing how he was doing, making sure he knew when events were so he could come in and be included in that, even if he was just like packed full of job stress and not able to get in for that. But he's on his way to third-degree black belt because what we do is important in his life and his son's life, that they are going to be successful outside of just what we do.
And that's a good point too, because as most people know that I'm a licensed psychotherapist too, and I have a small therapy practice, and so what we're doing doesn't replace mental health therapy, which is very important if that's right for you, but it enhances personal development so that we wouldn't be less depressed, we wouldn't be less anxious, we would be less depressed, we would be less anxious, we would have we feel more confident about ourselves, so we feel like we can do the next thing. Because among all these things, imagine if you started out and you felt like you weren't able to do things, and now you found out you could do a lot that you didn't even imagine you could do before, that you couldn't even, I don't know about you, but as an 8th-degree black belt now, I've done stuff that I never thought, if you told me when I was a white belt I could have done that, there's no way. And I think the same for you, right? Or even becoming a 7th-degree black belt. Go ahead.
Absolutely. There's no way that was in my thought process when I first came in at all.
Well,
and that was the thing I was thinking for the exclusivity. People come to us for different reasons. And part of the inclusivity is, if you come in for weight loss or physical fitness, if you come in to increase your self-esteem and confidence, if you come in for self-defense, all of those reasons that you might have, which have absolutely nothing to do with the disability, it's just stuff you don't know yet, we can teach all of that stuff and include
whether or not
everybody else.
Yeah, whether or not you have a disability or not, all those things could be. So again, to emphasize, we're not just talking about disability when we're talking about inclusivity. We're talking about everybody that may not, may be coming in for weight loss, but then like you just said, now years and years and years later, after you've been training a long time, you might be a third or fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh degree black belt. What you've accomplished and what you've gotten out of that is way beyond what really you started with. I just started because I wanted to, I got talked into it by somebody else, and I thought I'd try it out for a little bit. And then because I liked exercise, I was at the gym, and there's somebody was teaching at the gym, and I liked exercise. I liked doing that. And I thought, well, okay, I'll try it. And then what I've gotten out of that is way beyond, you know, thousands of things beyond what I started with. So when we talk about inclusivity, it's about helping people as well understand that they have the capability to do this. And then as we just talked about, one of the questions that you asked is, how does the inclusivity philosophy at KarateBuilt Martial Arts extend beyond the school and into the community? But then all of our, you know, all of our instructors, all of our parents, all the students, when they see other people, regardless of whether they're doing martial arts, they would expect them to have high standards, and they would expect more out of them, because they know that people with, you know, at any ability, talent, intelligence level, whatever, have capabilities, and we would expect positive movement for everybody. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to choose to help develop themselves, or choose not to let limitations hold them back. But in our culture, it's that way.
Exactly.
And that might be a good thing to wrap up on, I think, unless, did you have any other comments on?
No, that covered everybody, I thought.
Well,
And if we include everybody, there you go. We include everybody.
We included everybody as we include, as we're being inclusive. So let me see if I can get, okay, here we go, back to the charter. So today we talked about how, last time we talked about how we were a highly disciplined martial arts school and how discipline matters. And today we talked about how we measure results based not on who we exclude. So we're going to talk about other parts of results next time, about how we measure the constant growth from the moment they start to black belt and beyond. So I look forward to that. Senior Master Sanborn, thank you very much as always. I appreciate your time and your dedication to all the students, that we can create this kind of environment for everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.